paano mag-share? Okay, so in the first part of this webinar, so Dr. Gordonas mentioned on the prepare on how are we going to prepare our research paper, no, from the planning stage up to the data gathering and up to the writing the conclusion, summary of findings, and recommendation of the study. Now, before moving on the writing of the summary of findings, conclusions, and recommendation, so we will now do our data analysis. So what is data analysis and how is it important in research? Actually, data analysis is the second part. No? May encounter natin siya when you are enrolling in research 2. No? Kasi we have the research 1 and research 2. The research 1 is more on the planning stage of the research, and then research 2 focuses on the data analysis. Now, so what are the things that we need to prepare for data analysis? Number 1 is we need to revisit the methodology of the research project. So, paano ba natin sinasabi na revisit the methodology? Because we need to identify, number 1, to check the research design. No? We have to remember, class, that in doing research project, we as researcher, hindi tayo yung pipili kung anong klaseng research design ang mag-fit sa ating study. Kundi yung mismong study ang magsasuggest on what particular research design ang appropriate para sa kanya. Now, as researcher, the only thing you can do is to support the research design of the intended research project. So, is the intention of the study is on qualitative or quantitative? So kung quantitative siya, so therefore, ano bang design ang ginagawa natin? Are we into a descriptive design? Are we into case study? Case study is qualitative. Experimental research design? Or is it a correlational research design? So, kailangan nating i-visit yon. Bakit? Kasi yung dun magvavary kung anong mga appropriate statistical test ang kailangan natin for our research. Now, after validating or revisiting the research design, the next part is to revisit our survey questionnaire. Now, why do we need to check or to verify the content of our survey questionnaire? Again, it is very important for us to know the everything that we have in our survey questionnaire kasi dun magva-vary kung anong mga appropriate statistical test ang gagamitin natin. But of course, dapat yung ating research design or yung ating survey questionnaire passes through a certain condition. In the second part of our data analysis preparation, we need to analyze our type of data. So, ibig sabihin, from the survey question na meron tayo, tignan natin, ano ba yung type ng data na meron tayo? So, we will classify our data based on the following. Number 1 is nominal. So, meaning we have the so-called skills of measuring data. First is nominal. Ano ba yung nominal? Nominal, ibig sabihin, we classify certain information in single category. So let's say, for example, gender, civil status, religion, position, tenure. So we classify those variables as nominal. Ibig sabihin, for every category na ibibigay natin, merong isang distinct na paglalagyan yung ating subject of the study. The second one is ordinal. Ordinal classifies responses according to degree or level. So if the intention of your study is to measure a certain degree or level, so that is under by ordinal scale. So example nga natin dyan, no? Kung gumamit kayo ng Likert scale like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we interpret the data as excellent, very satisfactory, satisfactory, fair, then needs improvement. So that is under ordinal scale. So later papaliwanag natin bakit kailangan alam natin kung ito ay nominal at ito ay ordinal or ito ay ratio or this is interval. Kasi nakaka-apekto siya doon sa gagamitin nating statistical test. Next is interval. Actually, interval and ratio scale, pareho sila. No? Ibig sabihin, we classify our subject, no, based on certain ranges. So, ibig sabihin, gumagamit tayo ng mga lower limit and upper limit. Ano ba yung mga examples natin dyan? We have the income level or salary range. No? Pwede na tayong gumamit ng age distribution. Kasi usually, pag gumagawa tayo ng research paper natin o ng ating survey questionnaire, hindi natin dinidescribe to na, okay, age 18, age 19, age 20, age 21. Instead, ginugrouping natin sila. No? Ano yung pinaka-purpose natin kung bakit natin ginugrouping? For simple reason, para mas madaling i-interpret yung ating data. Okay, so tulad ng sinabi natin, meron tayong certain parameter na ginagamit dito. No? Ano ba yung interval and ratio? Actually, pareho lang sila na in terms of ranges, pero si interval kasi, ang limits niya is from 1 up to positive infinity. So, ibig sabihin, in interval scale, 0 is non-existing. Now, if the parameter of the study suggests that we need to include 0 in our limits, so hindi na siya under ng interval scale. That is under by ratio scale. Okay, ano ba yung mga nasa ratio scale? Age distribution. So, common yan sa mga demographic profile na ginagamit natin. Age is under ratio scale. Why? Kasi ang age ay merong 0. Sir, meron bang 0-year-old? Yes, meron. So kasi kapag yung mga sanggol, yan ay in months, hindi mo naman sila po pwede classify as 1-year-old. So hanggat hindi nila nare-reach yung 1-year-old, so therefore ang classification nila is 0-year-old. Why? Because our standard format for age to describe the age of a person is in terms of number of years, but not in number of months. Okay, so alam na natin yung 4 scales of measurement. We have the nominal, we have the interval, we have the ratio, and we have the ordinal scale. So, paano siya makaka-apekto? So, na-identify na natin, ito yung ating survey questionnaire o alam na natin na ito yung mga skills na gagamitin dito. What will be the next procedure in our preparation for data analysis? Next is, we need to understand the concept of population and sample. No? Kasi ito, no? I've been teaching research for a decade. No? From senior high school or high school, then to college, then to graduate school, no? Yung mga masterals and doctoral dissertation. So, iisa yung kanilang nagiging problem is the concept of population and sample. Many students really don't know how to identify a population and how to differentiate a sample from a population. So reiterate lang natin. When we say population, this is a finite or infinite collection of objects and usually denoted by capital N. So if we use capital N as your representation, so that represents a population of the study. Now, if we use a small n, that is a sample. Ang sample is just a portion of the whole population. No? Okay, so bakit kailangan malaman natin yung population and sample? Okay, First, you need to identify who will be the population of the study. Pag sinabi natin population, okay, ano ba yung standard ng study natin? So let's say for example, gusto mong, if your study is about study habits, let's say for example, the study habits of CBFS students during the school year 2022-2023. Okay, so kung yun yung study, so therefore your target participants or respondents of the study are the students enrolled in CBFS. But we have to understand that in CBFS, it comprises of different programs, no, and different levels. Parang different programs and different levels. When we say different programs, meron tayong population ng financial management, then we have the accountancy, we have the marketing, we have the office administration, and other programs. And for each program, meron yung first year, second year, third year, and fourth year. Now, pag alam na natin kung ano yung mismong population, or ito, yung aking respondents ay ito, no, manggagaling dito sa population na to, doon na tayo magde-determine ng sample. Sir, necessary ba na kailangan kunin natin ang sample or kailangan yung population size na agad ang kunin natin? It depends on the problem. It depends on the study you are focusing. So, kapag yung population size natin ay masyadong maliit, no? So therefore, hindi ka nagagamit ng sample size. Instead, gagamitin mo na si population. Paano ba natin masasabi na gagamit ka ng population? So kung halimbawa, less than 100 na yung population ng study, so therefore, gamitin mo na yung whole population instead na mag-sample ka pa. Bakit? Kasi ang ano natin, when you are doing the quantitative research, importante yung size, no, ng ating respondents. Kasi it affects the quality of data na gagamitin natin for our analysis. So, ibig sabihin, the higher the number of sample size or population size, so much better. Kaya nga, kung masyadong maliit na siya, sinasuggest namin is to use the whole population instead na mag-sample pa tayo. No? Pero kung halimbawa, less than 100, so pwede pa tayo mag-sample actually nun. No? Pwede pa tayo mag-50, pero at most na yon. Pero kung bababa pa sa 50, hindi na siya advisable. So better na mag-shift ka na ng research design instead of quantitative research, mag-qualitative research ka na. No? Pero yun nga, bakit alam natin dapat yung population and sample? Kasi aalamin natin yung sample. Sabi natin sample is only a portion of the whole population. Pero ang tanong natin doon, kung sample, so paano pag halimbawa out of 100, ang gusto ko lang ay 10. Tapos ito namang iba, kasi gusto ko, dahil magaling kami, 50 kagad yung pupunin ko as participants of my study. Ako naman, mid-mid lang ako, yung chill-chill lang. So doon ako sa gitna, pwede yung 30 or 40. Meron bang standardization? Definitely wala, di ba? Bakit? Kasi iba yung gusto nitong isang researcher, iba yung gusto ng pangalawang researcher, iba yung gusto ng pangatlong researcher. Pero ang tanong, yung bang mga suggested number of participants nila ay naka-anchor doon sa standards ng pagkuha ng sample out of the population size. So, to grade us, meron tayong tinatawag na effect size and power analysis. So, we have to understand people now in doing the research project, meron tayong dalawang type of error, no, na na-encounter. We have the type 1 error and the type 2 error. Type 1 error is also known as the alpha error, and the type 2 error is also known as beta error. Yung type 1 error, yun yung tinatawag natin na significance of level of significance. So yun yung alpha level. So ibig sabihin, every time na nagpo-post ka ng hypothesis of the study, lagi mong sinusulat, di ba, dito na the following hypothesis or hypothesis will be tested at 0.05 level of significance. Now, ano ang objective nung ating writing doon sa hypothesis of the study na yun? Ang gusto lang natin ipa-implement doon, o ang gusto lang natin ipaalam sa reader natin na yung ating parameter ng study will be delimited to 0.05. But you are just avoiding the type 1 error. Sabi nga natin, meron tayong type 2 error, which is the beta error. So, paano natin mape-prevent yung pagkuha o yung pagpasok ni type 2 error? So, mape-prevent natin yon using the concept of effect size and power analysis. So, ibig sabihin, in choosing the population size or sample size of our respondents of the study, so we have to consider also the effect size and power analysis. Sir, ano ba yung tinatawag natin na type 1 error at ano ba yung tinatawag natin na type 2 error? Kasi lagi yung binabanggit yan eh. At paano siya nakaka-affect doon sa aming statement of the problem. Pag sinabi kasi nating type 1 error, meaning you are rejecting the null hypothesis when in fact the null hypothesis is a true statement. Kasi diba, in our null hypothesis, meron lang dalawang interpretation. Whether the null hypothesis is a true statement and the null hypothesis is a false statement. Now, if you accept the true null hypothesis, walang problema doon. Pero nagkakaroon tayo ng problema if you accept the null hypothesis when in fact the given null hypothesis is a false statement. So, therefore, type 1 error yon. Ang type 2 error naman, you accept the null hypothesis when in fact the null hypothesis is a false statement. No? So, ulitin natin. Type 1 error, you reject the null hypothesis when in fact the null hypothesis is a true statement. Type 2 error, you accept the null hypothesis when in fact the null hypothesis is a false statement. Okay, paano natin siya i-apply in real life? Type 1 error, ibig sabihin, nireject mo yung taong nagmamahal sa'yo na alam mo na totoo siya para sa'yo. Type 2 error, inaccept mo yung isang tao na alam mong hindi nagmamahal o hindi totoo yung pagmamahal para sa'yo. So that is how are we going to interpret the type 1 and type 2 error. So in real life, ganoon natin siya tinitignan. Okay, so going back to our discussion, effect size. Ano ba yung effect size? Pag effect size, kinakategorize natin siya into 3. Small effect size, medium effect size, and then large effect size. Ano ba yung tinatawag natin na small effect size? Small effect size, ibig sabihin, nagre-require siya ng mas mataas na number of participants para magkaroon ng small effect na pagpasok ng ating type 2 error. Medium effect size, ibig sabihin, that is the probability of 0.5. So meaning to say 50% probability of committing type 2 error. And large effect size, meaning 80% kasi meron dyan nakalagay na 0.8. So ano ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin, 80% probability na mag-arise itong type 2 error. Now, in usual research, ang ginagamit natin is the medium effect size. No? So tulad ng ginagawa natin in research 2 or academic research na meron tayo sa college. So we suggest always to use medium effect size or small effect size instead of large effect size. Kasi sa large effect size, 80% probability na of committing type 2 error. Ibig sabihin, nasa boundary. Ang ginagamitan lang kasi natin ng mga large effect size, kung yung study mo ay hindi naman nagre-require ng ganong critical issues. So let's say for example, your study is about opinionaire lang. No? Gusto mo lang malaman kung ano ang opinion ng mga estudyante regarding on the upcoming face-to-face classes. So gusto mo lang malaman kung gusto nila o hindi, di ba? So pwede kang gumamit ng large effect size doon. Pero kung mayroong in-depth analysis na kakailanganin for the study, so therefore, we suggest to use the medium effect size. Next is the power analysis. Actually, yung effect size and power analysis was introduced by Cohen. So our reference for that is Cohen in 1988. So he introduces the effect size and power analysis to avoid the committing of type 2 error. Now, power analysis, according here, the higher the statistical power of a test, the lower the risk of making a type 2 error. So remember, we applied the effect size and power analysis just to avoid the type 2 error. Kasi si type 1, minimeasure na siya by level of significance. Power is usually set at 80% probability. This means that if there are 2 effects to be found in 100 different studies with 80% power, only 80 out of 100 statistical tests will actually detect them. So, ibig sabihin, yun yung ganong kataas yung strength, no? Kaya sinasuggest namin na always use the 80% power analysis, then itatandem natin siya at medium effect size. Okay, so, sir, paano namin hahanapin yung effect size and power analysis? Actually, with the guidance of professionals. No? So, actually, itong effect size and power analysis, dinidiscuss siya during the pre-oral presentation. So, kapag naandun tayo sa stage ng chapter 1 and chapter 2, dinidiscuss na natin si effect size and power analysis kasi nag-identify na tayo ng size ng sample na meron tayo. So, dapat dun pa lang, nasasuggest na siya. No? Ibig sabihin talaga, hindi kasi po pwede na kapag kayo gumagawa ng research, talagang kayo-kayo lang. So, unique assistance and guidance from professionals. Kaya nga meron tayong mga research advisors kasi you can refer to them all the technicalities ng ating research kapag gumagawa tayo ng research project. Okay, so nalaman na natin yung effect size and power analysis. We identify the appropriate sample number of your participants. So therefore, ano na yung next stage natin? So for our next stage is the conduct of the data analysis. So ano kayang gagawin natin sa conduct na to? Actually, this is the critical stage. Medyo technical ito. Actually, it requires a series of webinars para dito. No? Pero ang ibibigay ko lang kasi sa inyo, since we have limited time for this webinar, is the just the overview of how to conduct the data analysis. So kung gusto niyo magkaroon pa ng series of webinars regarding the SPSS application and Excel application, so pwede kayong maggawa ng ganong webinar. Okay? Next is, in the conduct of data analysis, we are qualifying the data. So, in qualifying the data, number 1, we are validating the reliability of the research instrument. Na-mention na to kanina ni Dr. Gordonas. No? Now, a survey questionnaire must undergo reliability statistics test like Cronbach's Alpha. So, ito yung most commonly used statistical test to measure the reliability of our research instrument. Ibig sabihin, hindi pa tayo nagsasurvey ha? Pre-survey pa lang yung ginagawa natin. Na-mention kanina ni Dr. Gordonas na nagkakaroon tayo ng validating portion, no, doon sa ating methodology. No, meron tayong pre-survey na kung saan sabi nga ni Dr. Gordonas na we select 30 participants who have the same qualities nung meron ka sa iyong respondents of the study na sila yung magpi-pre-survey. Ibig sabihin, we are just qualifying the ability or capability of our research instrument kung maging reliable yung ating mga sinulat na statements doon together with the cross analysis doon sa rating scale na ginamit natin. Okay, ito ang question natin. Sir, ano bang standards natin para masabi natin na yung ating survey instrument or research instrument is reliable and within the accepted value of or standards of statistics. So tingnan lang natin ito. So here is the table for Cronbach's alpha and its internal consistency. Now, if the obtained value is 0.9 up to 0.99, so we interpret it as excellent. So from 0.9 to 0.8 to 0.9, so that's good. So 0.80 to 0.70 to 0.80, so that is acceptable. So pag bumaba tayo ng 0.70, so meaning your survey questionnaire is questionable. So lower than that, we interpret it as poor, and below 0.5, that is unacceptable. So ibig sabihin, dapat mag-fall lang siya from 0.70 pataas. So below 0.70, so ibig sabihin nun, you need to revise your survey questionnaire. So kaya nga sinabi ni Dr. Gordones kanina, medyo critical, technical yung stage na yon, kasi kaya nga sinasuggest niya na kung meron kayong nakukuha na standardized questionnaire, yun na ang gamitin ninyo. Bakit? Kasi nga, kapag kayo ay gagamit or nag-create ng survey questionnaire, so gagamit kayo ng Cronbach's alpha. Whereas, kung meron na kayong existing or meron kayong gagamitin na standardized questionnaire, so all you have to do is to modify some statements dun sa inyong standardized questionnaire, so mas mabilis na siyang gawin. So, you modify it, so pwede nyong gawa ng Cronbach alpha, yung at least yung result nun hindi na lalayo doon sa result ng unang tinest siya, no? Sa reliability statistics. Now, how are we going to interpret the output of the reliability statistics? So dito sa babang table, meron siyang tatlong columns na nandito. So if the Cronbach's alpha results, the Cronbach's alpha based on standardized item and the number of items. So ang importante lang dito yung nasa left and yung nasa right. Yung Cronbach's alpha value, we have 0.748. So ibig sabihin, when we interpret that, andun siya sa acceptable level. So dito lang tayo titingin. Hindi na nyo kailangan tignan dito. So kung acceptable siya, ibig sabihin, all number of items, itong 9 number of items doon sa specific variable na yon ay okay na siya. So paano ba tayo magkakandak ng reliability statistics? Kasi ang ginagawa ng iba, pangkabuuhan na yung ginagawa nilang Cronbach alpha, which is wrong. Bakit? Kasi kung doon sa ating statement of the problem, you mention that assessment will be evaluated based on different variables. Let's say meron kang 2.1 to 2.4, so meaning meron kang 4 na variables. So kung meron kang 4 na variables, dapat meron ka ring 4 na result ng Cronbach alpha. Sir, bakit? Ano pong mangyayari kapag halimbawa, hindi na po namin sineperate siya per variable? Ang ginawa po namin ay yung buong questionnaire. No? Kung 20 questionnaires, ang 20 statements, no? All throughout the survey questionnaire, ang ginamit natin for Cronbach alpha. Ito lang problema doon. Paano kung yung ating computed Cronbach alpha is less than 2.70? So, ibig sabihin, yung venting statement na yon, babaguhin mo. Wherein, kung yung yung Cronbach alpha mo ay nakascattered or nakakoncentrate per variable, kung ano lang yung variable na less than 0.70, yun lang ang i-revise mo. Hindi na affected yung other variable. No? You can request that dun sa statistician na gagawa ng inyong paper. Kasi this is technical and you need, kung gusto nyo mas mapadali, you need to seek an assistance of a statistician for this. No? para sila yung mag-run ng reliability statistics and then interpret nyo na lang yung result dun sa output na ibibigay nila. Kasi kung kayo pa ang gagawa ng reliability statistics, kung imamanual nyo at gagamit ng software, so kukulangin yung isang buwan para sa lahat ng inyong data analysis. Okay, so again, the important part of the reliability statistic table is only the Cronbach's alpha here and the number of items. Okay, next. So after natin mag-conduct ng reliability statistics, the next one is to identify the type of distribution. So medyo statistics ang dating natin kasi totoo talaga ito yung reality na pag gumamit tayo ng quantitative research. No? Okay, so you need to identify the type of distribution that we have. So sir, malalaman ba namin kung anong klaseng type of distribution during the planning stage? Definitely no. Pag gumagawa tayo ng chapter 1 and chapter 2 up to the methodology of the study, ang concentration lang natin or focus lang natin is on the planning stage. No? So with that, ang focus lang natin, ang assumption natin doon sa ating mga respondents or our data is our distribution is normal. Kaya lahat ng dinidescribe natin na statistical test during the planning stage are all statistical tests intended for normal distribution. When we say normal distribution, we have the perfectly bell-shaped distribution. No? So, nakakita na kayo ng bell, di ba? Okay, so yung bell, ganun dinidescribe ang normal distribution. Ibig sabihin, it's either perfectly bell-shaped distribution or almost perfect yung ating distribution. That's how we interpret normal distribution. Now, if the data is normal, so therefore use parametric test. Now, if we found out that your distribution is not normal, so therefore use non-parametric test. So para sumasakit na yung ulo namin dyan sa parametric and non-parametric test. So aalamin muna natin, paano natin ma-identify whether your distribution is normal or not. So therefore, research may undergo normality test such as the Shapiro-Wilk test. So okay, for this test, ang ginagawa lang niya is to identify the type of distribution. So niraran lang siya through the SPSS, then malalaman na natin doon based on the values na nandun whether the distribution is normal or not normal. So according here, the value of the Shapiro-Wilk test is greater than 0.05. So if the parameter of the study, if the set parameter of the study is 0.05, so use 0.05. So kung ang ginamit nyo sa study na level of significance is 0.01, so use 0.01 as your parameter. Then if you use 10% level of significance, so therefore, ang parameter na gagamitin natin in deciding for the Shapiro-Wilk test is 0.10. No? But in most common cases, ang ginagamit natin is 0.05. So that is the default. It depends again on the complexity of your study. Now, since, consider na ang ginamit natin is the 5% margin of error or 5% level of significance. So ito ngayon yung ating magiging interpretation. So kapag daw more than 2.05, so paano pa natin masasabi na this is more than 2.05? If the value is 0.051, that is more than 2.05 na yon. Pero kapag yung computed data natin is, or computed value is 0.049999, so that is less than 2.05. Okay. Greater than 0.05, so therefore the distribution is normal. Pero kapag less than 2.05, therefore the distribution is not normal or significantly deviate from normal distribution. Ibig sabihin lang nun na yung ating distribution is not a perfectly bell-shaped or almost perfect in distribution, ibig sabihin, yung distribution is a skewed distribution. So kapag skewed ang distribution natin, dalawang klase yun. Whether the distribution is positively skewed distribution, ibig sabihin, ang paling natin ay moving to the right, or negatively skewed distribution, ibig sabihin, ang paling natin ay going to the left. So, ibig sabihin, ganun yung description ng ating distribution. Okay, sir, why is it important for us to identify whether our distribution is normal or not normal? Like what I said earlier, nagva-vary kasi doon kung anong klaseng test ang kailangan nating gamitin, whether parametric test or non-parametric test. So, ano ba sir itong mga parametric test and ano ba itong mga tinatawag natin na non-parametric test? In statistics kasi, pag nagkamali tayo ng gamit ng test, therefore, lahat ng computation natin, invalid na yun. So, halimbawa, gumamit ka ng t-test, pero intended pala dun sa study na is chi-square distribution, so therefore, mali ka na kagad ng interpretation ng data mo. Next, these are the distribution for the parametric test and non-parametric test. Sir, paano namin malalaman kung anong klaseng test ang gagamitin natin? So, tingnan muna natin, ano bang hypothesis mo? Yung bang hypothesis mo na pinost is test of difference, test of relationship, or test of effect? Kasi iba-iba yun. Okay, ano ba ang inferential question mo? Kung ang inferential question mo, sinabi doon, is there a significant difference between achuchuchu at something like that? So, ang pinaka-keyword lang natin doon is there a significant difference? Ibig sabihin, that is under by test of difference. Okay, in test of difference, dalawang klase siya. We have the parametric distribution and for non-parametric distribution. Then, nagva-vary rin siya on the different grouping of our data. Okay, kapag yung gusto lang natin i-compare is within two groups, now, considering that your distribution is normal, so therefore, pwede kang gumamit ng t-test. Pero, kung yung distribution natin is not normal, so therefore, ang gagamitin mo is Mann-Whitney U-test. Sir, bakit pag gumamit kami ng t-test? Ibig sabihin, pag gumamit ka ng t-test, considering that your distribution is not normal, so therefore you have a wrong interpretation of your data. Now, if you are comparing more than two groups of data, so therefore, hindi na t-test ang gagamitin natin. So, more than two groups, 3 or more groups of data. So, therefore, ang gagamitin natin doon is analysis of variance or ANOVA or F-test kung tawagin natin for parametric test. And for non-parametric test, ang gagamitin natin is the Kruskal-Wallis test. So meron namang mga formula na ginagamit available in Google on how are we going to find for the value of ANOVA and Kruskal-Wallis test or for Mann-Whitney or for t-test. Pero ang t-test kasi, no, maraming cases kasi yun. Whether you are comparing the population mean or the sample mean. Ibang case yun. Ibang case din naman, you are comparing two different sample means. Ibang formula din yun. So, you have to assess the type of data that you are going to interpret. Okay, so alis tayo ng test of difference. Let's say, you're trying to identify the test of relationship. Test of relationship, kapag yung ating hypothesis na posted or inferential question, sinabi doon na, is there a significant relationship between this data? So, if you are comparing two groups of data, so therefore, pwede kang gumamit ng Pearson product moment correlation coefficient for parametry. Pero, if your distribution is not normal, we can use the Spearman rank order coefficient. Yes sir, hindi naman relationship yung aming tinetest. We are identifying the effect of data of one variable to another variable. So therefore, if you are comparing two quantitative data, you can use the linear regression analysis. Pero if you are comparing two or more than two quantitative data, so therefore, pwede kang gumamit ng multiple regression. Pero kasi kapag gumamit ka ng test of effect, medyo mataas na uri na kasi yung ating analysis dyan. No? So, nagre-require siya ng mas mahabang period. So, kung iyan ang gagamitin nyo or kung iyan yung study na ginagawa ninyo, so you have to put more time for your data analysis. Okay. The third one, no? When you are doing the data analysis, you need to identify the appropriate statistical test based on research questions. So ito yung common problem no, ng mga estudyante kapag gumagawa na sila o gagawa sila ng data gathering procedure. Bakit? Kasi from the research outline or statement of the problem natin, so kailangan ma-identify natin what will be the appropriate statistical test na gagamitin natin to interpret the result of your test. So, consider that we have this kind of statement of the problem. So, we have to understand in posting or writing the statement of the problem, two parts yun. Ano yung two parts? The first part is introducing the research problem. Pag sinabi natin introducing the research problem, yun yung ating pinaka-first statement or first paragraph. So tulad dito, the prime objective of this study is to identify the transformational leadership behavior of private medical school in Quezon City as basis for the designing a leadership training program for medical school. So that is the research problem. Now, the second part of the SOP or the statement of the problem are the specific questions or research questions that tends to answer your research problem. So, iyon yung individual questions na makikita natin na naka-enumerate SOP1, SOP2, SOP3, and SOP4. So, tingnan natin. Based on this SOP, it identify here SOP number 1, how may the profile of the school officials officers be described as to? So 1.1, we have age, gender, civil status, highest educational attainment, and number of years in the present position. So all of these questions are intended to measure the demographic profile of the study. Now, age, gender, civil status, educational attainment, and number of years in the position. So for you to be able to analyze that, ang gagamitin nating data treatment for that is percentage. So, for SOP number 2, ang question natin, how do the respondents assess their transformational leadership behavior in terms of 2.1, we have idealized influence. 2.2 is spiritual motivation. 2.3, intellectual stimulation. And 2.4 is individualized consideration. Okay. Since the intention of the study, no, kapag binasihan natin yung survey instrument na ginamit mo, itong 2.1 to 2.4, ang measurement niyan, meron ka ng scale. No? Okay, so halimbawa meron kang scale na ginagamit dyan. So ibig sabihin, ang data mo is ordinal. So pag ang data mo ordinal, hindi mo siya pwedeng gamitan ng percentage. So therefore, for you to be able to treat or analyze better your data, so therefore, ang gagamitin nating data treatment will be weighted mean. So again, si percentage, ginagamit lang siya if your data is nominal, ratio, or interval. Hindi mo siya pwedeng gamitan ng ordinal. Si ordinal, para matreat mo siya ng mas maayos, ang gagamitin mo sa kanyang data treatment will be weighted mean. Okay. So, gusto mo ngayong malaman yung correlation ng ating SOP1 to SOP2. Kasi dapat, kung nagtanong ka ng demographic profile, nagtanong ka ng assessment, dapat merong relationship yung ating demographic profile doon sa mga succeeding questions mo. Kasi dapat yung ating SOP ay interrelated from one another. So, to make a connection from your SOP1 to SOP2, doon tayo nag-post ng question sa SOP number 3. Kaya nga sinulat natin dyan, is there a significant difference in the self-assessment of the school officials, officers, and the teachers' assessment in terms of leadership behavior? Just to make connection between SOP number 1 and SOP number 2. Then, for SOP number 4, nagtanong tayo, how may the findings be utilized in designing a leadership program for the medical school? So, that is the intended output of the study. Pero sa SOP number 3 natin, since this is the inferential question of the study, so therefore, yung appropriate test ang gagamitin natin dito based on the result of our normality test. So, medyo technical na siya, no? So, 1 to 4 pa lang yung dinidescribe natin. So, ibig sabihin, the more SOP na pinost natin in our research questions, the more it requires different statistical tests. Kasi for every SOP na dinescribe natin doon, there's a corresponding statistical test para doon. Okay. So, pag na-identify na natin yung ating mga test na yan, yun yung ilalagay natin doon sa statistical treatment of data in our chapter 2. Now, in your data analysis, gagawin mo na siya. So, kasi nakapagkanda ka na ng study, so therefore, i-apply mo na itong mga test na dinescribe natin. No? So, kayo na pinakita sa inyo kung paano siya gagamitin as much as possible, no? In presenting your data interpretation in chapter 3 or chapter 4 in the conventional format, as much as possible, use table. No? Huwag na kayong gumamit ng mga charts kasi in charts kasi applicable lang siya kung gusto mo makita yung figure ng ano. Pero kasi kapag nasa research tayo, yung 0.01, 0.02 is very significant. So, hindi mo siya nakikita kapag chart ang ginamit mo. Kaya, sometimes, nagre-require ang panel na instead of chart or figure, use table to interpret data. Okay. So, halimbawa, nalaman na natin, okay, nag-apply na natin sa percentage, meron tayong weighted mean, and then we have the inferential test. Madali lang for the percentage and weighted mean. So, ang problema natin itong inferential test. How are we going to interpret the result of our inferential test? So, this is now the next part, which is the data interpretation. So, I have here a sample of test. So, according here, in table 24, this is a significant difference on the assessment of the three-pillar function of the HR or human resource when grouped according to the type of capital of the company using the Kruskal-Wallis test. Okay, dun pa lang sa ating table, dinescribe na doon kung anong klaseng test yung ginamit. So it is assumed that the distribution is not normal. That's why the researcher used a Kruskal-Wallis test. So, ang Kruskal-Wallis test dyan, yung nakalagay na chi-square. So, ayun yung naandyan sa taas. Ito, yung mga tinatawag natin na criteria or variables to be measured. No? Yun ang three-pillar function. Okay. So, dito naman sa susunod, yung ating DF or degrees of freedom. So, tignan nyo mabuti. Itong degrees of freedom natin, dapat yan ay pare-pareho. Truth to all. pag yung ating degrees of freedom nagkaiba sa bawat variable, ibig sabihin, there's something wrong with your paper. Kasi dapat yan ay pare-parehong degrees of freedom. Next is, yung last part is the asymptotic significance. Okay, in interpreting the result of the hypothesis testing, especially if you're using or interpreting the result of the SPSS application. So therefore, ang titignan natin dito is the asymptotic significance, yung last part. Okay. So again, ang ginamit natin doon sa unang ating part ng testing is 0.05 significance level. So since yun ay 0.05 significance level, ang basis natin for deciding whether we need to accept or not our hypothesis is 0.05 also. Okay. So tingnan natin, asymptotic significance, ito yung tinatawag natin na p-value. Now, in decision making of data interpretation or data interpretation in statistics, dalawang klase kasi pwede mong gamitin basis eh. Pwede kang gumamit ng critical values to interpret the result of the test, or you can use the p-value. Kapag ang ginamit natin is the critical value, ibig sabihin nun, titignan mo lang if your computed statistical test value is more than or less than to its critical. Kasi if it is more than to its critical value, so therefore you need to reject the hypothesis and accept the alternative hypothesis. Kapag naman less than siya do sa critical, meaning to say you need to accept the null hypothesis and reject the alternative hypothesis. Now, in the case of p-value, ang titignan lang natin dito whether the asymptotic significance value is less than or more than 2.05. Now, kasi yun yung parameter na sinet niyo for the significance of the study. Okay, in asymptotic significance here, ang meron sa atin dito is 0.706, we have 0.857, 0.851, 815, then we have 0.420, 0.861, 0.258, and we have 0.026. Okay. Ang parameter set natin is 0.05. So definitely, yung partner contribution, partner covenants, and partner culture, partnership course, partnership community, partnership configuration, and partnership communication, lahat ng asymptotic significance nun is more than 2.05. So kung more than 2.05, ano bang ibig sabihin nun? Sabi natin dito, if the asymptotic significance is more than 2.05, so we interpret it as significantly different. No. Ibig sabihin nun ay pag more than 2.05, we will interpret it as there is no enough evidence to show. Ibig sabihin lang, pag more than 2.05 kasi, dapat siya ay i-reject natin. Pero, when you are interpreting your data, we are no longer use the term reject. So, instead of saying reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative hypothesis, we write the interpretation as there is no enough evidence to show that there was a significant difference, instead of saying reject. Ngayon, kapag significant naman siya, significant kapag less than 0.05, tulad nitong theme of the center of excellence. Kaya sasabihin natin sa ating interpretation, there was a statistically significant difference in the assessment on the three-pillar function of HR functions on the theme of the center of excellence as Kruskal-Wallis value equals to 7.271 as P is less than 2.05. So, importante na isusulat natin to, i-include natin yung value ng computed Kruskal-Wallis value and yung parameter na ginamit natin or yung asymptotic significance. Dito naman, since no enough evidence to show nga in partner contribution, partner covenant, and so on and so forth, so ang interpretation lang natin doon is the p-value is greater than 2.05, but no need to declare the specific value of the Kruskal-Wallis value or the ANOVA value. No? Okay? So that is how are we going to interpret the output of the statistical analysis. No? Okay, so with that, that's the end of my presentation for the data analysis. So therefore, like what I said earlier, if you need further training or webinars on SPSS application and how to use it and how to apply it in the different specific fields, so that requires another webinar kasi medyo technical doon. So mayroong program na dapat gamitin doon, and at the same time, yung ating mga audience din ay meron din silang mga gadgets na gagamitin para masundan nila yung paggamit ng software and also some of the applications na possible gamitin for the data analysis. And hopefully, my presentation will be beneficial to the ongoing research classes ng Office Administration or Human Resource Management here in our university, UMAC. So thank you very much and have a great morning.
Thank you to Dr. Agustin for your worthy presentation of the topic. It was very informative and I learned so much. Once again, attendees can now type in the chat box your questions, which will be answered by Dr. Agustin. Say, what I learned so far is the I don't know how to pronounce it, the Cronbach's alpha. It was very interesting to see things in a different way, such as, a set of items in a way as a group, giving it accuracy for us to determine our population and our sample. What about you, partner? What did you learn?
Sorry, I was on mute. Actually, my takeaway is when Dr. Agustin mentioned the bill curve. In my experience in a corporate environment, bill curve really helped our organization, our department. And for example, when we are processing our incentive plan, the bill curve really helps us. So as for HR, for us in our profession, it will really help us, provide rewards to, the top performers and put an extra effort for the average performance. Because in the bell curve, we can really identify who are at the top and who are at the bottom of the curve. So in that, the low performers are actually identified quite easily. And, the action plan can be implemented to improve the performances of those bottom performers. So that's one of the highlights that I got from Dr. Agustin's session. All right, so everyone, if you have any questions, comments regarding the discussion that Dr. Agustin had, please type into our comment section.
Okay. So sige, habang nag-iisip pa sila ng question. Simulan ka na, Sir Ali, Doc Ali.
Yes, Ma'am Jen.
Opo. Ang question ko, di ba, for the Likert scale, ilan para lang para clear lang, and then we have standard. Pag sa Likert scale ba, ilan talaga ang ginagamit? 5 or 4?
Ma'am, it depends on the study that you're actually doing. No. Okay, so in academic research kasi, we usually use the 5-point Likert scale. Bakit? Kasi ang pinaka-purpose lang natin doon is magkaroon ng neutral part, which is the 3, as our parameter. Pero if the intention of the study is to identify the positiveness or negativeness of the study, huwag kang gumamit ng 5-point Likert scale. Kasi pwede siya mag-fall into neutral eh. So therefore, gamit ka ng 4-point scale instead of the 5-point Likert scale.
All right, thank you so much, sir. So, can we call in Ms. Fia Bernadine Severano, the Internal Vice President of HRDM, to award the Certificate of Appreciation?
Ay, Adam, baka may question pa. Wala na ba?
So far, ma'am, there's no questions in the chat.
May tanong pa ako kay sir.
All right.
So, another question, sir. SPSS lang ba talaga yung parang ano natin na software na, kasi alam ko ano siya, di ba? May bayad siya. Tama?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir Ali,
Talagang
oo.
ang statistician nagre-require din ng fee kapag
Oo.
nagde-data treatment siya kasi nga gumagamit siya ng software and yung software binabayaran din po kasi.
So pag yung sa mga inferential test ba, mayroon ba siyang parang equivalent na pwedeng gamitin sa Excel natin or wala talaga? Isasalang talaga siya sa SPSS?
Actually, you can use the Excel application. Yun nga lang po ma'am kasi kapag gumamit ka ng Excel application instead of the SPSS, ang concern lang natin dito kasi is kailangan mo mag-test ng normality. So kapag nag-test ka ng normality, hindi siya kayang gawin through Excel. So, ima-manual mo siya. So, pag minanual mo siya, marami, pwede kang hindi gumamit ng Shapiro-Wilk test. Pero, alamin mo muna kung ano yung histogram and skewness, no? Yung kurtosis niya, para makita mo yung shape ng distribution and then you can decide whether the distribution is normal or not. So, from there, saka ka ngayon gagawa ng manual computation using the Excel application. Kapag gumamit ka ng Excel, pag gumamit ka ng SPSS, mas maganda na siya kasi isang click mo lang for the normality test and then alam mo kagad, so pwede mo na siyang gawin kagad yung pinaka-data treatment. So mas reliable yung output niya kasi lahat ng evidences na andun sa result ng SPSS.
So yun, kasi
Unlike,
sige sir.
Unlike dun sa Excel, kapag gumamit ka kasi ng Excel, kailangan mong ipa-revalidate doon sa minsan kasi sa panel, pag sabi mo Excel ang gagamitin mo, pakita mo kailangan yung ginamit mong Excel sa kanya just to prove that your result is okay or not or manipulated. Kasi pag Excel, pwede mong i-manipulate yung yung result niya. Unlike in SPSS, hindi mo siya pwedeng galawin.
So isang click lang talaga nandun na yung kailangan ng data, no? Pero yung pwede natin gamitin, sir, sa Excel, yung mean, median, mode, weighted mean, pwede. Pero yung parang pinaka sa correlation.
Pwede siyang gamitin through Excel. Pwede rin naman siyang gamitin sa descriptive analysis ng SPSS. Meron din po doon.
Meron din. Yung iba kasi, ito as per experience, no, kaya natanong ko din, kasi nung nag-panel kami dun sa mga previews na nag-research, pag tinanong, nasan yung niyan? So, hinahanap namin yung paano nila na-compute, ganyan. Parang sila na lang talaga daw nag-compute. Parang, dapat statistician talaga. So, para clear lang dun sa mga estudyante natin that you have to ask for the help of yung mga experts natin, mga statistician. Lalo na dun sa pag-compute ng data nyo. Hindi pwedeng yung kayo-kayo lang yung nag-compute, diba? Kasi yun, may mga error kasi na dyan. So parang hindi na magiging valid yung yung data nyo, tsaka yung result ng findings. Okay.
Meron kami na-encounter niyan, So, dahil nagtitipid siguro sila o hindi ko alam o talagang siguro gusto lang nilang i-utilize yung kanilang statistics skills. So, sila yung mismong nag-treat ng data. So, the problem is, hinanap namin muna, ano ba yung result ng normality test mo? Normal ba yung distribution or not? Kasi, ang ginamit mo t-test. Ang t-test is intended for parametric test for normal distribution. Paano mo nasabi na yung data mo is normal? So, anong evidence mo? So, kailangan ipakita mo yung result ng normality test.
So, yun kasi ang daming mga pwedeng gamitin ng mga Pearson R, ANOVA, di ba? So, iba-iba rin. Pero parehas ba yan pag sa correlation, yung mga or iba-iba din, depende pa rin, ano?
Ibang ginagamit na treatment eh. So, pwede kang gumamit ng Pearson R, pwede kang gumamit ng Spearman. Depende sa type of distribution.
So, yun. So, ato ngayon, sir, samantalahin na namin, no? Can we ask your help regarding dun sa statistics ng mga research natin, writers natin ngayon, na kung kaya pa ba ng powers mo, sir? Kasi I know you're handling ilang research, no? Pwede daw.
8 research classes.
No, 8 research, my God. Ako nga isa lang, 8 groups, parang na ako, no? Umiinit na yung ulo ko.
So every Wednesday naman, nasa school naman tayo. So, kung kailangan nila ng consultation with regards to their statistical analysis, so pwede naman.
Yun. So, yan
Can provide naman.
Na-hot seat ko na si Sir Ali. So, pumayag na siya. So, yung mga nagko-conduct ng research, actually, lahat naman ng attendees natin are enrolled in research. So, yun po. May tanong pa po ba yung iba? Baka may gusto pa kayong i-clarify. Kasi matutulungan ko kayo for the interpretation of the tables. Pero syempre talaga, kung mali yung pagkakakuha nyo ng data, so doon tayo nagkakaproblema. Pwede kong ituro yun. Pero yung stat kasi, so kay Sir Ali talaga yan. So syempre kailangan yung mga statistician talaga dyan. Thank you so much, Sir Ali.
Thank you po for the invitation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agustin, for that knowledgeable session. Again, we would like to call in the attention of Ms. Pia Severino, the Internal Vice President of SHRDM, to award the Certificate of Appreciation. Sir, I think, is it okay if we can move into a next presentation?
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. We would like to present you a certificate.
Okay, the
So I'll
certificate.
stop sharing my...
Okay, thank you po, sir, for our research, because this certificate of operation is rewarded to you, Dr. Ali Agustin, for sharing his valuable time and expertise as our research speaker in Research 101 teaching research in the hybrid learning held on September 16, 2022 via Zoom. This is given the 16th day of September 2022 in the University of Makati, Makati City. Thank you very much, Pia. Again, we would like to ask everyone to open their camera for a photo opportunity with Dr. Agustin. So we have 6 slides in total. May I ask everyone to open their cam once again and give your best smile.
Standby lang po. Since 6 slides po yung dito po sa Zoom. Thank you po.
May tanggal yung photo opportunity na nasa gitna.
Thank you po. Okay, done. Slides 1. Sa 2. Okay, done na rin sa slide 2. Thank you. Slide 3, done. Slide 4, done. And slide 5, done. Thank you po.
Thank you as well. Again, we would like to remind everyone to fill out the evaluation form. To wrap up our closing ceremony, please welcome the advisor of SHRDM, Dr. Lucille Artista, for her closing remarks. Ma'am, excuse me po, nakamute po kayo, ma'am.
Ayan, okay. Okay na? O sige, sorry about that. Okay, good day again everybody. I know we had a great learning opportunity today, but before we take our lunch, let me just close this webinar by saying first thank you to our guest speakers who devoted their time and effort in sharing their expertise, Dr. Gordonas and Dr. Agustin. May we be guided by their advices in writing our thesis, reading the journal, citing our sources, using APA for your references, asking the right questions, and of course, knowing how to interpret your data. Be passionate with your topic so it won't be that stressful. Again, following your passion and doing what you love is really not work at all. As per Dr. Abercos said before, be humbled by your works. Diba? In paper writing, you can only be as good as your last work. So let's appreciate collaboration as per Dr. Gordonas. We learn from each other, we learn from others, and I know you will not forget the sharing of how Dr. Agustin related type 1 and type 2 error in your relationships. It's statistically heavy, but very much well discussed and presented. No? He presented us to us in actually layman's term din naman, di ba? So we were able to grasp how we're going to handle the data. So we thank you again for attending our webinar. We hope to see you again for our future webinars. So stay safe, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you, Dr. Artista. The organization is grateful for your diligence and support that have made this event victorious. And that concludes our webinar for today. We hope everyone learned so much from our speakers. We would like to congratulate all the Society of Human Resource Development Management and SFOP officers for making this event possible. Once again, my name is Adam Ray Villasoto from SHRDM.
And I'm Emilia Gabriel August from SFOP. Thank you for joining us and have a great day ahead.
Thank you, Sir Agustin, for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.
Yung
Thank
mga
you.
organizers, wag mo nang let's have post, meeting.
Na kami umalis.
Wag mo na umalis. Hintayin muna natin, for those attendees, you may leave the Zoom. So,
Teacher, pwede lang umalis.
ay, hi ma'am! Sige, apo ma'am. Okay na ma'am. Ma'am Marge.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay po. Post-evaluation tayo kasi hindi natin nagawa to dun sa leadership eh. Parang kasi Saturday yun, parang lahat nagmamadali.
Kahit wala.
So yung mga participants, may ask everyone to leave the Zoom. So iwan lang po yung mga mga facilitator organizer.
Congratulations, Adam. No? Good work. And Emilia, good hosting.
Thank you, ma'am.
Marunong na kayo mag-adlib, di ba? So, pag may gap, alam niyo na kailan kayo papasok. That's very good.
Thank you po, ma'am.
Actually, parang nabilib si Dr. Gorlonas kay Adam. Sinor nga niya si Sir Adam. Sabi niya sa akin, Mari, teacher ba yung MCs? Hindi, those are students.
Naku, Adam, mag-prepare ka na. Baka mag-panel sa'yo si Ma'am Gordona.
Oo, mag-i-invite ako ng panel from outside. Kaya lang kasi very busy talaga yun si Actually, nung after niya mag-talk, sabi niya, pinatawag na daw siya nung boss niya. Kaya nag-leave na rin siya after nung So yun nga, may mga pa ba? Itong 3A HRDM, si Frias. Ano siya? Officer? Wala nang parang ibang attendees na nandito. So, yun. So, sige, ma'am. So, congratulations. Na, ma'am. Congratulations sa
Ganda po ng webinar natin.
organizers natin. No? So, yun. So, mga comments, ma'am? Do you have any comments and suggestions, ma'am Lesil?
Nagka-technical problem lang tayo sa video kanina. Pero everything else, okay naman po. Ang ganda nga, kaya nadala nung dalawang host natin yung event, no? Kapag nagkakaroon tayo ng technical difficulty. Ayan, pumapasok sila. Kaya po, na-compensate naman nila yung ano natin. Siguro po pag talaga video, mahirap siya mag-load. Kahit minsan naka-ready na siya pagka actual nawawala eh. But okay naman po. So far, yung naging flow naman ng ating kahit Q&A, may mga nagtatanong din naman po. So, hindi kasi heavy yung the way it was presented by our two speakers. Hindi heavy ang dating nung thesis, no? Nung yung writing. Binaba nila yung level ng discussion. Kaya I guess, marami talaga nag-benefit sa kanila with regards sa kung paano nila gagawin yung thesis nila. Ayan.
Kung nakinig sana, ma'am. Sana lahat nakinig, di ba? So, yun. So, yung observation, anything else mo? Para sana to avoid yung mga ganong, kasi this is our second na sana, no? Yung sa leadership, so, yun na natin sa leadership. Medyo okay yung flow nung dun, ma'am, di ba? Nung program, ready lahat. Although, kasi nung nag-dry run tayo, nasa kotse din ako, kaya hindi ko makita talaga yung kung ano yung nandun sa Canva, sa PowerPoint. So, hindi ako masyadong makapag-comment. Parang more on nag-focus ako dun sa sa mga MCs. Tapos hindi ko rin sila masyadong marinig that time. Ewan ko kung anong nangyari dun sa phone ko. Kaya nakaganon ako, ma'am, habang nung nagda-dry run sila. And then, so since ito yung dalawang webinar na facilitated ng with the SFOP at SHITM. So, yung topics naman talagang very helpful dun sa self-leadership and dito sa research. So talagang pinilit ko talaga na talagang ayaw kong matapos yung SEM yung sa research 1 na talagang hindi makonduct tong research na to. Kasi alam ko na maraming matututunan yung mga estudyante natin na those are enrolled sa research. So yun na. Yan lang yung sa kasi hindi ko alam, siguro nagkaroon lang ng hindi maayos na communication yung technical ng SHRTM saka SFOP. So to avoid siguro to, dapat may group chat tayo, dapat nagko-comment kayo dun eh. No? Parang ako lang na nagbubunga nga dun, ma'am, no? Tapos wala dead man lang sila. Di ba, ma'am? Tapos hindi pala kayo nag-uusap. So, hindi natin alam kung sino yung, parang magtuturoan, di ba? So, yun ang ayaw nating So, parang, at least, very, naman, nakakapag-adjust yung mga, although nagko-comment din ako dun sa group chat na, hindi ma-play yung di ba? Actually, wala tayong national anthem.
Wala.
Di ba? Oo. Kasi dapat yun, di ba, ma'am, dun sa webinar natin, self-leadership, downloaded lahat ng videos.
Opo. Yun, ma'am, na-play natin before. Opo, na-play natin yun before. Yung although naglalag po kasi yung sa prayer before in national anthem. Yun ang nagiging problema natin, ma'am, naglalag. So,
pero kasi, ma'am, pag dinownload yun, Tyras, di ba, hindi kayo nag-uusap, dapat yun, na-download niya na, kasi I shared the link, i-download nyo, and then, di ba, ma'am, ginawa natin is naka-separate window lang siya.
Yeah, separate window siya.
Oo, hindi yung nakikita, naka-share screen, nandun pa sa Google Drive. Even yung, yung video ni Dean, hindi rin na-play. So, ewan po, anong nangyari, ang daming technical, ang daming yung officers, di ba? Dapat you should,
compared sa technical last time, tsaka ngayon, last time ang problema natin, medyo naglalag, meron pa ring lagging dun sa video, pero ang naging difficulty natin noon sa breakout room, tsaka yung whiteboard, ma'am, dun tayo nagka-problema kasi hindi familiar yung iba on how we're going to utilize yung whiteboard and then yung breakout room. Yung ngayon naman po, talagang yun, nagka-problema talaga tayo sa playing ng mga video. Yan talaga. At saka nagkalimutan tayo ng recording. Ako, I didn't notice din po nung simula.
Ay, ito pala naka-recording pa. Dapat i-stop ang recording.
Recording stopped.
Hindi dahil nakapag-record ng first part, sayang, napakaganda ng talk ni Dr. Gardona, sayang.
Kaya
Pero at
nga.
least na-capture din naman po natin yung kay Dr. Agustin. Yun ang importante rin po kasi yun yung kailangan natin ulit-ulitin kasi it's about quantitative. So, pwede sanang maulit natin ito, bigyan natin ng access yung lahat na magsusulat ng thesis para they could review on paano nila mag-interpret yung data nila. Yan po, very important yan.
Pero yun nga, yung sa flow kasi, dapat technical, automatic na yun, na magre-recording kayo, diba? The video should be ready. Ganon, kasi parang, yung hindi yung nag-aasahan, ma'am, diba? So kung walang, Tyras, ikaw na mag-download, kung hindi mo maaasahan yung mga technical mo. Hindi yung parang, ay, hindi po namin alam na kami pala yung magda-download, diba? Parang, nag-uusap ba kayo? Di ba, ma'am? Nakakaalam lang, actually maganda yung mood ko kanina, pero nung nagsisimula parang pumapangit na. Oo. Andito ka kanina si Ellie. Sabi ko, bakit nandito ka? Sabi ko kay Ellie, di ba may webinar na supposedly this webinar is para sa inyo? And then, kung ano-anong ina-accreditation na inaano nila, ma'am. Parang, di ba?
Ang final na po kasi yun ang deadline po ngayon ng re-accreditation.
Kung kailan deadline, ngayon nyo lang aasikasuhin yung mga accreditation nyo. Ito not for, kasi yung mga resource speakers natin, alam nyo, si Dr. Gordonas, ang mahal ng niyan, ng talent fee niyan, for 2 hours, siguro, pinakamababang bayad niyan is 6,000. Pero, di ba, since kakilala ko siya, kumaga free, sabi niya, sige Mari, basta bigyan mo lang ako ng certificate. Even Sir Ali. Tapos parang sila ma'am, they give their time para matulungan yung mga estudyante. Tapos parang, di ba, parang yung essence nung tapos makikita mo pakalat-kalat dito yung mga supposedly na sila dapat yung uma-attend. Diba? Kasi alam naman nila yung schedule, ma'am, diba? So if the speakers, kami ni Ma'am Lucille, yung mga faculty natin, we give time. So parang we are expecting dun sa mga talagang para sa inyo kasi yun for the 3rd year office sa AD and HRDM, di ba? Sa ibang department walang ganito. This one is we are helping you na talagang yung iba kasi parang 'di ba na-stress yung teacher, na-stress din yung estudyante. Wala na sa research, 'di ba? Nakakasira talaga